ready to correct me, but I think I got it right. All right.
Okay, welcome everyone. Northern Neck Regional Jail, July 21st, 2023, day 925.
Wow.
925. Amazing. So I want to really address this tonight to everyone that's hopefully going to be tuning in through our Northern Neck Patriots website, and we're going to plug this out there and get that on that website for everybody to see it. But I just definitely want to send this out to all those folks, and so I'm going to tee that up in a minute. But as usual, we'd like to kick this off with a prayer and Pledge of Allegiance. So let's do it. Heavenly Father, thank you again for providing the guidance and the courage for people to stand up and speak out in this country. Give the people that work in this facility and the people that are incarcerated here the strength and dignity to get through this time that they have. Please keep your love and attention on everyone on the J6 community, including the individuals who are so wrongly held, but also their families and loved ones that support them. And thank you for this beautiful day and for the ability to be here standing up for those in need. In Jesus' name, amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The system that the DC jail uses for their tablets and their phones has been having problems. So we put out an action item earlier this week to call in and let them know about our concerns. I did that. I know a lot of other people did it. In fact, someone reported to me late in the day when I sent out that note and said that they told us they've received a lot of calls. So you know, that's good, because you got to keep the pressure on. It's a big deal. These guys, their calls get dropped, and it's not just to us, it's to their family members, to their attorneys, to everyone. Their calls get dropped. They're either of such poor quality that they break up. This happened last time when we were talking to asked me what he said because she wasn't able to really hear it. So hopefully they got that figured out. But I want to go through our ever-expanding list of people that have been in the Northern Neck Regional Jail. Again, some of our supporters who are in direct contact with these guys have added another couple of names to our list. So anyway, we'll start out. I did alphabetize this by last name. So starting out, Howard Adams, Zachary Alam, Tim Boehner, Nicholas Brockhoff, Jeffrey Brown, Mason Corson, Lucas Denny, Israel Easterday, Brandon Fellows, Mitchell Gardner, James Grant, Matthew Green, Kenneth Harrelson, Albuquerque Head, Justin Jersey, David Judd, Cash Lee Kelly, Hosea Kenyon, Nicholas Lagerund, Samuel Lazar, Marcus Malley, Mark Mazza, Patrick McCoy, Jonathan Mellis, that's a new one. You've heard his name probably, but he said that he spent about 10 days here at the Northern Neck Regional Jail in February of this year. So we were not aware of him passing through here. Matthew Miller, Robert Morse, Jonathan Munafo. Michael was here in June, end of June, just before July 4th, 5th, something like that. So, yeah, very short time. Dominic Pizzola, Mark Ponder, Ronnie Presley, Mahila Pryor, Chris Quaglin, Barry Ramey, Zach Rail, William Reed, Howard Richardson, Thomas Robertson, Daniel Rodriguez, Jeffrey Sabol, that's a new one, Ryan Samsel, Ronald Sandlin, Troy Sargent, Jeffrey Sills, Andrew Taki, Enrique Tario, Ricky Wilden, and Kyle Young. So this is what Jeffrey Sabol said to one of our friends here who follows these guys. She asked him if he had ever spent time at Northern Neck Regional Jail, and his response was, yes. During my tour of incarceration locations prior to my landing in the Hotel DC, similar to the Hotel California, one of my stops was a 7-week stay for some much-needed R&R at the posh arts and crafts facility known as NNRJ. So I did get a note also, came from Barry Ramey, who's going to hopefully be calling in and trying to line some callers up. He's going to have Michael Perkins call. Michael was the one that was here just very briefly in late June. So very excited to talk to him. You, Maurice, and Steve, really, guys, you guys hit it off. You could have had your own program, you know, just talking about almost anything. So anyway,
show.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a chance to say something.
So, yes, Steve and I kind of had complementary perspectives on a lot of different issues. It was really good to come together and just kind of look at you know, when you bring folks together like that, it kind of broadens the overall picture. And it was good. It was really good. In fact, I was able to get him in touch with the guy that's running for school board. I hope going public with that information doesn't hurt him, because, you know, the school board's been weaponized. Anyhow, so yeah, that was good. I don't want to do a core dump on just about everything that's been going on just yet. We've got 2 hours to fill, and I can fill it. But I think I think there's a lot to talk about out there in the world. There's a lot to talk about here at NNRJ, and we're going to figure out exactly where to throw our rocks and fire our ammo. Anyhow, for right now, I'm happy that the fans just got turned on. It's kind of warm.
Maybe I should break the fans this time.
So one thing I want to make sure to get out there also is, have any, I don't think either of you have you, Ron, signed up to the alerts on our Northern Neck Patriots site? There's a place where you can do that, and our member Gary just put out a really nice piece just last night. He utilized the email I sent out earlier in the week. It had Cheryl's write-up of what she spoke about at our last meeting, and it had the call to action on calling the DC jail and stuff like that. So just an action item to do that, because I think what we would like to do is start maybe leaning on that platform more to get communication out to our members. I got to tell you, the emails are hard, you know, copying and pasting 150 names, and, you know, just, I'm not even sure that a lot of people get those. I think what Gary did was really, really good. So I'll show that to you in a bit. But again, for anybody who's watching for the first time, I'm just going to pan around here. Your display over a little bit.
What am I looking for?
I just want to move the display a little bit there.
Yes.
I just connected my sensor.
Well, just move it so you can see the plaque, guys. So this is the, yeah, there you go. So there's a brass plaque back there.
Oh, perfect.
This monument is dedicated to the officers and employees of the Northern Neck Regional Jail, whose service and sacrifice represent the very best of Virginia. Awesome plaque and awesome
It is.
awesome statement of the.
For the most part, it's accurate.
Yeah, I would believe so. So we can put it back down, Cheryl. I just wanted to show that.
Can you see
And
it better over here?
but while we're there, Cheryl's got a real nice display that has probably 20 or so of the J6ers that we've been following closely, and a little bit of background on them. And maybe that's something else we can try to think about getting on our website too, at least some links. That's fine, Cheryl. We can see it just fine. It's great. Thank you. So panning around, again, it's Friday night at 7 o'clock. This is what we do every Friday night at 7 o'clock since October. We're here at the jail. That's the Northern Neck Regional Jail. Last time I went inside a little bit. I think we'll stay out here. I lost connection when I went inside. But anyway, hopefully we will start our calls here shortly, and this is our setup.
See anything?
Yeah, it's all good. So this is how the email comes in. It comes in as Northern Neck Patriots, Northern Neck Patriot News. What he did is just, it shows up on your computer a little bit differently than it does here in this format, but still, it's got a logo. It's a beautiful image of the flag in the background. And that's got the action items we put on the DC jail. And then this, I believe, is Cheryl's in the red, right? Was it yours? Yeah, that was Cheryl's write-up that she did last time, which was phenomenal. There's a link to the Sentinel here and a few other things. So, yeah, really nice.
My next talk is going to be pushing myself out of my comfort zone.
Nice. You ready for that?
Well, I'm going to have to work on that talk for the next meeting,
Yeah.
because I'm pushing myself out of my comfort zone, you know, when I talk. So.
You can't tell if you know her today, but yes, she does push herself out of her comfort zone, and I'm extremely proud of her.
So this was the action item that we put out last week. Our brave political prisoners in the DC jail have plenty of hardships to endure, but not being able to communicate with their loved ones and supporters is a real problem. Calls are often dropped, not connected in the first place, or of such poor quality as to be worthless. Brian Jackson's call to our vigil Friday night broke up, and several others were not able to get through. I think it was Chris Quaglin. He identified himself and then it hung up.
And it was gone. Yeah.
I said, please call the DC jail to let them know this is a real problem. The phone number, 202-790-6601. It's in blue on a blue background, a little hard to read. But they will tell you that GTL, the service provider of the tablets, is aware of the problem and the jail is at the mercy of their response. But this has been going on for several weeks, so please respectfully ask them to escalate the matter. I know a lot of people called because, in fact, one of our members wrote me late in the day to let us know that she'd called, and she commented that they told me a lot of people have been calling about this issue. So hopefully it had something to help.
You want to talk about your comfort zone?
No, at the next meeting, I haven't met yet, so. But I thought that was a good thing to talk about.
So we were doing this thing at our meeting we kicked off last time called the 180-second challenge. And it was meant to be cute a little bit, but that's 3 minutes. That's what you get when you go in front of a board of supervisor or a school board meeting. You get 3 minutes. And we've all seen some of those really impactful statements that people stand up and, you know, and give the school boards heck about, you know, the kind of materials that are in our schools and everything else. And you can tell, you know, that those people generally didn't just walk up there and decide to start talking. They thought about it ahead of time. They probably practiced it. They knew what they could get into 3 minutes, and darn if they don't get it down to just right about exactly right. So I think there's two things. There's several things. One is getting used to being able to stand up in front of people. This is what we've been talking about, how difficult that is. But it's more importantly, I think people get very nervous if they don't have clear thoughts in their mind of what they're going to say. And they get caught in a trap. I've done it, where you get up there, you're standing, our brain works like 10 times faster than our voice does or our words do. And so your brain's racing ahead and listening to you speaking, and it's going nowhere. And your brain's already, bailing out, but you don't know how to get away from it. So I've seen that happen. I've done it. Keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it to the point. So.
So yeah, so yeah, at the last Board of Supervisors meeting, I had an entire audience that was attacking me. Who are you? Why are you even speaking up? What's your problem? Well, those things can happen too. And honestly, there's things that have been said by the likes of Mr. Trump, the president, what's going on and what the consequences are if the people as a whole don't stand up in front of boards of supervisors, and I point to Mike Flynn on that one. You need to get out of that shell and figure out how to say what's on your mind, because it counts. It really and truly does count. And Cheryl mentioned, the people that were yelling at me at the last time I spoke to a Board of Supervisors meeting. And you can't let it bother you, because A, they're not going to be in your bedroom the following morning, and they'll probably move on with their lives. So it's not as bad as they try to make it sound. But the reality is if you let something like that inhibit what's in your heart and in your mind, we need what's in your heart and what's in your mind. So we need you to speak out and say it in spite of all of the stones that might be thrown at you. Anyways, that's just my first piece on this particular topic.
As you were speaking, it made me think about our callers. These guys have a lot of time, obviously, on their hands to think about it, to write their thoughts together. Some of them do it really, really well. Some of them do kind of roll with it and just seat of their pants when they call. But usually they have a message that they want to get out. And I think they've gotten really good at it. And obviously, we're not the only people they call. They call in the DC Vigil every single night. They're talking to other reporters. They're talking to the Mel Hollies of the world, the Gateway Pundit, other people. So they've had to get their message figured out. I mean, it's what we've always said. Their voice is their strongest tool or weapon that they possess. And that's all we're trying to do here, is to be a conduit and get that out. So one thing I was thinking about, it made me think about it when you looked at Robert Morse's website. Do you remember, can we give him a shout out of what that is? It's Lego Man, do you remember the...
www.aka2gs.com.
I'm going to ask you to do that again.
It's www.aka.thelegoman.com, and that's with 2 G's for Lego Man, because otherwise it's copyright. Lego is copyrighted, so you have to have something different. So it's Lego Man with 2 G's. www, and he'll probably repeat it when he calls, www.aka.thelegoman.com, 2 G's.
Thank you so much. And Robert just launched that, I believe, on July 14th, or at least that was the date that they planned, but it is up and running. And they have links on there to several of Robert's statements at the vigil at Lewisburg. Now, what I think they're doing up there, maybe, is they're only recording, or maybe whoever's doing it, only recording when a call comes in, and then turning off the mic. We just keep it going because we're not that sophisticated. But
Hey, you know what? This is what we call grassroots. So there it is.
let me put that up in front of the screen here.
So yeah, we're going to share a picture of the website of AKA the Lego Man, and it's really good that he did this. Now we have to understand that every J6er political prisoner is out here trying to make their own lives better for themselves, because in all honesty, they're in a bad way, and I can't blame them each for trying to figure out how to make their own lot better for this life. But this guy here has managed to, from behind bars, assemble a website that's useful in spreading, sharing everything that's going on. And aside from their voice being a pretty potent weapon, these guys seem to stick together even if they don't like each other all the time. And their unity is another aspect of their weapon. So these guys they're not like regular prisoners. You know, I see news reports of people that get arrested all the time. And the type of people that normally get arrested for like armed robbery, carjacking, rape, pick your choice. But those kind of guys, they don't have a big education. They don't have a nice vocabulary. They can't talk or speak out. And they're usually guilty at the end of a long train of bad decisions. These guys that are J6 political prisoners, they're educated. Many of them college educated. And they're not the kind of guys cashiers in your local convenience store. These guys, they're professionals. They had good jobs, they had families, everything before January 6th, and the only thing they did was show up for what is obviously a corrupted election, which is the primary American right to show up and peacefully assemble. So they've served in the military. Some of them actually get punished for having served in the military. They're viewed as a threat. Can you imagine that? Viewed as a threat.
A lot of them have lost their benefits. A lot of their family members have lost their income. That maybe you know, being former military, you know what that means. But I think that's for a lot of them is their lifeline, right?
Yeah, exactly. So this is malicious. It's insidious. It was completely set up. I mean, think about it. There was 2 million people there that day. If they really wanted to commit some kind of insurrection and they were committed sufficiently, do you suppose that they would have been unsuccessful if they had actually tried? That's 2 million people. I don't care how many guns you got in the cops. If they were really set on overthrowing something, they would have. It didn't happen. There's a lot of other politics going on with that. I think everybody sees that, but there's just, this is a crime. It's an ongoing crime.
Have you guys been seeing the latest videos of this satchel that got dropped off and then picked up?
You talking about the cocaine?
No, not the white powder. A duffel bag. So there's video footage that's been released recently of police officers carrying a duffel bag to a set of doors. They set the duffel bag down. On top of the duffel bag are 2 sets of zip tie restraints. They open the door, pick the duffel bag back up. The 2 restraints fall out on the ground. They go inside. Somebody comes walking along a few minutes later, sees the restraints on the ground, picks them up, plainclothes person dressed, you know, just like us, and takes the zip ties and puts them on the door handles to secure the doors. Walks away. A little while later, these officers need to come out, and they're trying to get out. There's fire extinguishers going off, and they're becoming overcome with the cloud of chemicals, and they're trying to push out, and they have to forcibly push these doors open and break the restraint to open it. So that was all very interesting to watch that. Then later you see this duffel bag again being brought inside a little bit of a vestibule, set down. Someone else, another police officer, brings in and sets it down. Next thing you know, the crowd changes, and it's protesters, and the protesters, somebody picks up the bags and takes them out into the crowd. We don't know what's in these things, but then suddenly someone, Good Samaritans from the crowd, bring them, place them back in front of the doors. So it's the weirdest thing of these bags being carried around. The assumption is that they were probably some sort of emergency response equipment, you know, maybe first aid, maybe who knows what. But it makes me think about the number of police batons that people are charged with. Several of our members that have been through here had picked up batons and had either held them in their hands or actually struck someone with them or taken them. Where did all these batons come from? If you remember, who talked about No, Tariq Johnson's a good guy. He's one of the guys. He was a Trump supporter. He wore a Trump MAGA hat with his uniform, and he was actually helping to get people out and so on. But he was the one who's come forth recently and said that his supervisors were trying to get him to gather up 30 expired helmets, DC cop helmets, prior to January 6th. It's not the way the protocol is normally done. Your helmet expires, it needs, you know, it's out of date. You need to get it either recertified or get a new helmet. You come in, you do it. You don't just en masse do that. So they were trying to gather up 30 of these helmets for the only reason to expose these people, to expose the police officers that would have to deal with this crowd. So that helmets, extra batons laying around, someone could have easily walked along with a overcoat and dropped batons. Who knows? But there were plenty of those laying around, it seems like. So, yeah, so that's the latest video I've watched on J6. Where's the good stuff? Where's the good videos that are really going to come out that show all this stuff? I think that stuff's... Saw Tommy Tatum, who, by the way, testified in court to what he saw and witnessed when he laid on the ground 8 feet away from Roseanne Boylan as she got beat to death. So those videos need to come out.
Yeah, they absolutely do, because, you know, we were talking with Cheryl's physical therapist earlier today, and one of the things that came up is that the average person just doesn't have the time to go digging. And while she was aware of some of the things that we were talking about, there's a lot of other things that she wasn't, and she's interested, but she doesn't have time. She just gave birth to a baby.
Tell me the story that you had about the fire.
You're going to have to tell that one, because I can't quite clearly remember it. Oh, yes, I can. So at the schools, there's Fire Safety Day. And the local fire department shows up, bunch of firemen wearing their garb because they want to show the little kids, you know, we're talking elementary school. Little kids, here's the stuff. You know, when you see a guy dressed like this, don't be afraid. He's not a monster and everything. And so they had a little Q&A afterwards, and this one little boy, you know, he asked, you know, the fire chief, you know, a little question, and the point is not, it's not about the question.
Fire chief or whatever.
Mister, what about this, and this? And the fire chief answers it, and then little girl raises her hand And rather than address the fire chief when she was called on, she looks to the little boy and says, you know, you can't assume that he's a mister. You have to ask for his what they're teaching in the schools. And I didn't mean to segue that from where you were, but but this is what's going on, and quite honestly, even parents, they're too busy raising and feeding their kids to even see what's going on in the schools. And we can talk about that at another point, but it's kind of ugly that the manipulation of information out there to paint different pictures for everybody with the same events.
Who was it said, give me your children for 5 years?
Lenin. He says, give me your children for 4 years and the seeds that I plant will not be able to be uprooted. And it's happening. It's actually happening. You know, the schools in my county, Northumberland County, Virginia, they actually have an equity commission that makes suggestions to the school board. The school board is all too happy to request funding from the county to support this hatred. And that's, if you read the reports, it's full of hatred. They teach children that, you know, white people are in power and power is racist and therefore white people are racist. They've redefined everything. And never mind the population distribution. But and it's all not true. I mean, anybody that's lived for a few decades knows that your odds of being successful in life are more dependent on the decisions you make than they are the color of your skin. That's just me. But this is the lies that they've been telling. J6 is no different. I mean, they've woven, and you gotta give credit where credit is due. Can you imagine the amount of effort that went into taking a day that had 2 million plus participants and turning it into an insurrection, the details that had to be covered, the things that had to be edited out? That's a lot of effort. There was a lot of people involved. Just saying. So the idea that maybe this jail or other jails, I understand that the community jail in Petersburg has had some pretty horrendous events lately. The idea that these superintendents of these jails weren't given a heads up weeks, if not months, in advance of what was just saying. So anyhow, that's my piece for the last 5 minutes. I'll give this back to Tom.
I looked up Tariq. Brother from another mother. Oh,
there was a rumor floating around last week that one of our brave callers, who spent a lot of time here, had a lawsuit against the jail and won it in the tune of $40+ million. 42 million. So I looked in all the local papers. I looked everywhere that I could think of. You looked on the Pacer, which is the filing of all legal action. Yeah. So nothing there. Didn't turn out to.
That's something we've got to be aware of. But there is
a case. I believe it's a gentleman from Virginia. It's he filed against CNN because so he was arrested and pleaded guilty to some of the minor charges, but the write-up they gave on him basically accused him of insurrection, of coming to the Capitol to do, so basically he's suing them for libel, and I think that one's just hit the press, so I saw a brief look at that.
There's another case, a J6er that we haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, but he's managed to get airtime with the Supreme Court. And his argument is that nobody showed up with the expectation that they were going to do battle with anybody. But because things got a little bit out of hand, otherwise innocent people that were only there to address grievances, to peaceably assemble and exercise their First Amendment right, ended up in altercations that they would have never ever expected. His argument is that if these convictions hold, the chilling effect that it has on Americans' ability to exercise their First Amendment right is devastating. If you can't express your First Amendment rights without fear of retribution, incarceration, and in the case of this place, torture, then where does the Constitution stand? So I'm kind of enthusiastic about the idea that this case is going to be heard. Regrettably, the Supreme Court is currently in they're supposed to be coming back October 1, so it might be first on their dockets. I haven't looked lately, but it's going to be a good case because it's pretty basic. You know, if you can't show up with a crowd that all have the same common complaint without fear of being incarcerated, how do you express and live with your First Amendment? There's no other vehicle. So that's in the news. It's somewhat encouraging that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case, and we need to just pay attention to it.
So I looked up Tariq Johnson. It's Tarik, and then Johnson as normally spelled. Former Capitol Police officer. He described lack of communication, unpreparedness on January 6th. But again, he's been calling out the top leadership in the D.C. Police Department, and I can never remember her name, Anananda, something like that, who was second in charge, but I'll find that here in a minute.
It's like when we go fishing. We better do something to break the spell, like eat a banana. No.
Oh,
You
no,
don't
no, no,
you don't take a banana.
Number one rule, no bananas.
So, Cheryl, why is it you can't?
That's the story.
Yeah.
You know the story, right? Try to remember what the story is.
Bad luck, right?
It's bad luck, yeah. I guess when back in the day they used to bring bananas across the sea, and there was always some sort of tragedy that happened when they had bananas. I don't know, but the rule is when you go fishing on a charter boat, at least, do not bring bananas. I went charter fishing one time and didn't catch anything, and then somebody took out a banana and started eating it, and the captain says, "Look, that's why we're not catching anything. Get rid of the bananas, and whatever you're eating in your mouth, wash it out and throw it." But it was so funny. I don't know the story, but look it up.
So I have a similar story. We were out on my boat once. There were 4 of us. My friend who brought along his friend and his son, and we were trolling. And happening. We've got probably 10 rods out, lines out, and so my friend says, "Did somebody bring a banana?" And Gary says, "Oh yeah, I've got one. You want some?" And he says, "No, get rid of that thing." So we've got pictures of Gary and his son both filling their cheeks with the banana because they didn't want to throw it away. So they're eating the banana, tossing the peels overboard, and literally within about 5 minutes, the fish started to bite. Yeah, swear to God.
What this says about bananas. What this Hubbard's Marina website says about bananas, one reason could be that bananas are naturally sweet and sticky, and they also release ethylene gas, which some to believe acts as a natural fish repellent. So that could be it.
So if you get it on your fingers and get it on the lures, then maybe. Oh wow, that's interesting. How about that?
Well, there's if it doesn't know, make it up.
That would be fun too. We could do that sort of thing at our next meeting, the makeup story thing. But we've got so many storytellers. I'm sure they would run with it. But could they do it in 180 seconds? Is the question. I don't think so.
We'll ask him when he signs right back. What's the story? See if he comes up with something different. We have a question for you. We have a question for you. Come back to the light.
Oh, okay.
We were talking about you behind your back.
Sure.
So hand him the microphone. Not be prepared. What's the story about why do we not bring bananas on a fishing boat?
Bad luck. Same thing for suitcases.
Why?
Bugs.
Why for bananas?
Tarantulas.
I thought there was something about they were bringing bananas across the river or something. And
So no, if you go down towards the tropics of the Western Hemisphere, bananas are a big deal, but they also are home to tarantulas. You bring that stuff onto a boat, people tend to freak out. So it's actually the tarantulas that, by the way, just so you know, when I was taking my break, I looked it up.
see, that's not fair. What would you have said before that? What would you have said before that?
What I would have said before that was that it was a superstition. But you know, there's nothing like, you know.
That's not fair. That's cheating.
Yeah, well, you know, a tree is a tree. Just saying. So, it's 7:45. Are the phone systems having issues? I'm a little bit worried about that because it's not the second week in a row, because last week we had a really good showing. But there's been problems, and it's been because of the phone systems. And I'm not convinced that it's an accident. So I used to do system administration years and years and years ago for a pretty far-reaching and broad system. Not being able to get out is never more than a few hours unless you're under attack or administratively downed. So I'm very suspicious about this inability that guys have to be able to call out. It doesn't smell right.
Add that on top of the fairly recent altercation with the Antifa type person that was a deliberate setup to cause dissension and you know, arguments, and which it did, because the guy was really in everybody's face, especially telling everybody that Ashley Babbitt wasn't actually murdered. So that did not go over very well with everybody there.
You know, she wasn't really murdered. Mickey's an awfully dedicated person to somebody that's doing well. Every night for years now.
Speaking of that, if you go on the For Ashley website,
Yeah.
I believe that Mickey has put a 1-year anniversary of their vigil. I believe it's August 8th. if somebody wants to take look that up. So that's one I would love to go to in DC. I think it's a Tuesday. Yeah, August 1st is our meeting, so it's got to be a Tuesday. Everybody, when we throw out the idea of going to Washington D.C. from out here in the Northern Neck, it's like I'd rather stick a thorn in my eye, you know.
Yeah, it's die of multiple fork wounds. It's pretty painful. I've never had a decent experience driving up to DC. I've got to look for a car right here.
By the way, Robert Morris is going to be 30 on August 20th of this year. And, my birthday's August 17th, so we get to celebrate birthday week together.
That's
And
probably-
August 20th is a Friday, so maybe we'll get to say happy birthday to him.
What do you think about this database that I've given? I haven't really shared it. You've seen it. I don't think I've sent it to you, but what I was trying to do was obviously be able to sort these guys by name. When they arrived here, when they were moved out, trial dates, sentencing dates. That's all out there. Where they are right now, that's unknown. I mean, a lot of them are still moving around. But I think birthday would be a great one to put on.
There's someone else. Who was it?
We might be able to find a way to populate birthday.
Chris Quagland or somebody had a birthday or has a birthday. He had the August too. I think I mentioned his birthdays. I forgot which person became he was, or whatever you want to call him. Gotta go back and listen. Or ask. Everybody, when's your birthday?
I know some of the databases that I look at, American Gulag is one, and you've looked at that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how often they update things, but the NPR one,
That's amazing
Yeah,
that NPR is actually doing that quality of work
they're
on this topic.
updating it weekly for sure.
It's awkward because normally they you go and you look at the root stuff that they report, and not just what they report, but how they go about reporting it, and just go, my God. NPR is just another left-wing rag. But no, on occasion, if you're just paying attention, there was an article written by a gal, I don't recall her name, but she was NPR, and it was about the mostly peaceful riots, and her take on it was, no, they're not, and she was in your face with, no, they're not, totally truthful, totally honest, calling out the stacks of bricks that were put in suspicious places in the middle of downtown cities, and a whole bunch of other things. And I was so impressed with it that I actually reached out to try and make contact with her, but I'm another face in the crowd, obviously a right-winger, so I probably got filtered out. But so every once in a while, NPR's got an island of sanity that goes on. So you got to be careful who you reject. I mean, we've all been a little bit torqued off at Fox lately. But is Jesse Waters bad? Just asking for a friend, because, like I say, you got to be careful, because there's good news, good presentation of news mixed in with bad news and bad presentation of news. It's coming from all directions. We've got a lot of people that a lot of folks follow out there on the internet, X22, LT. You take your pick, and based on my experience working with the government, I recognize what they're doing, and folks need to understand that bad information, information in and of itself does not have intention. The way it's packaged and the people that send it can have intentions, and those intentions can be good and they can be bad. And when you're in an information war, you need to expect that the people that are fighting for your side, they're also engaged in disinformation, because that's the weapon of choice. So don't get discouraged when someone tells you that so-and-so is engaged in a psyop, because it's probably keeping this country sane right now. And I can think of a few cases, but I don't want to start a civil war all directed at me right now. But I'm just telling you that there's some psyops going on out there that are specifically intended to keep the people of the United States from going into a civil war.
Did you guys get to watch that over-sexualization of women thing that I sent you?
No.
What was it? Why did we not?
Why did we not? Because YouTube. We have to. I have to disconnect the. What is it called that we have?
You talk about the VPN?
VPN.
Yeah.
I have to
YouTube
disconnect
doesn't
the
like VPN.
That's why I kept on saying, what's I kept on trying to get Northern Neck Patriots YouTube, and I never didn't want to come through it. Then I realized you just have to disconnect our VPN, and then
Which
everything's on YouTube, so I could.
it's an interesting point, because VPNs in and of themselves, they like give you anonymity. But if banks don't like VPNs, a lot of them don't let you log in if you're connected to a VPN. And I get that part, because a lot of attacks can come from a VPN. You can't tell, at least superficially, you can't tell who did it. So it takes a couple extra days to figure out who did it. It's not impossible, but YouTube and another number of other organizations won't allow VPNs to come in. And one of the problems is that it's the reason. So HTTPS is the universally secure connection. That's great for people that go talk to Google, because they know exactly who you are and where you're coming from. The problem with a VPN is they can't really, it inhibits their ability to identify you. Yes, they can still identify you. But what you don't know is everything's all about the consumer end. We want to protect the consumer, but when you get those protections, you don't know what the other end, the big corporation end, is doing with the information and how it works for them. So we've got this lopsided, consumer-leaning notion of protection that's actually facilitating bad things on the big corporation side. So it's not, nothing is as good as it seems. VPNs are not the panacea. Unfortunately, you need one, you just need to know when to turn it off. And in fact, my VPN, ExpressVPN, they give you the ability to make a list of URLs and websites that you go to that won't allow VPN, and then simply bypass the VPN and just go out there, which isn't necessarily great because of what corporate side's doing with your information. But at least you can continue to go. But eventually, I think that's what I'm seeing coming down the road. I used to get paid to know what was coming down the road 5 to 10 years in advance.
Yeah, so that's why anything YouTube, I have to. It always says you cannot get access.
The reason I ask is because the links that are in there talking about psyops, there's a whole lot of information there about that. For instance, I think it was in the 20s when they started really going after women to convince them to start smoking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
It was not just, hey, there's an untapped market. It was a intentional, let's go and make cigarette smoking cool and fashionable.
The 20s were also the period when the suffrage movement came along. And suffrage. And all of that was choreographed. They're not unrelated. They're all kind of together. But back then, one of the biggest forms of communication was the vinyl drums and the records, and keys. They didn't have the communications that we have now, but they were organized. They were definitely organized. This stuff has been around for a long time.
I follow a group of people that fly under the name of the Ethical Skeptics. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a bunch of rocket science quality geniuses that do work in philosophy, statistics, history, a whole bunch of things. And I really wish that every American could pay attention to them, but I know that most won't.
Should work with Bob Malone.
There's a lot of truth in there. They do a really great, they did a two-parter a couple of years ago on the difference between misinformation and disinformation and how each one of them is used. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if, because there's some of us that have been trained for years on that stuff, but the average American has no idea what the difference is at the fundamental level, what the difference between misinformation and disinformation is, much less how it gets used. So
Well, give us the basics, because I'm not sure that I know.
So misinformation is an out-and-out lie. Disinformation is the insidious packaging of truths within lies and lies within truths. And you see it happen all the time on mainstream media. They'll sit there and tell you stuff and you go, it really wasn't quite that way, especially for something that you may have been there for. It really wasn't quite the way they're painting the picture, but sometimes it can be difficult to figure out where the breakpoints are between the falsehoods that they're painting, because it's very subtle. It's extremely subtle. And it's all deliberate, and usually the way they package it is such that not only is it disinformation, but it's put together and staged in such a way to hit your emotions. So one of your first clues that you're facing disinformation is when it triggers strong emotions. That's your first clue. That should be your red flag. You should calm down and put your rational brain on if it's still available. But no, the disinformation part, and like I was saying before, information does not have an end. The person who's providing the information has to end.
So it's whenever I'm speaking, with our group or whatever, and I'll be referring to something, and I'll say, we need to send this information out. I try not to do that because it sounds too much like we need to send this information out.
I totally get it, because you don't want to be misconstrued to be providing disinformation. I mean, after all, especially with the Hispanic crowd, because disinformation, man.
I was thinking Italian or something.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's. We have had them before. Leading up into World War I, there was a lot of disinformation going around, usually in printed word, but in the streets and wherever else. And yes, they actually had the whole LGBTQ thing. They called it something different back then. But the sexualization of abhorrent and aberrant behaviors, that was alive and well back then. It was in the streets of New York, and in fact, they had a church. It was built around sex, and the church was run by a priestess, not a priest, priestess, and it took up 3 city blocks in New York.
So that's the Sally Port,
So
the
these
vehicle
are
Sally
things that,
Port,
people just don't know.
where they bring the prisoners
Just
in.
don't know.
That was a car that went in there. That's usually a van.
That's
So the van windows are blacked out.
that's lab.
Typically, you can't really see into them.
So they're going in there to either pick up or take samples.
Well,
you've got the people in here that do whatever EMT stuff that they're supposed to do, but
it was a gray car, and
yeah,
it was.
That's what LabCorp drives when they go in there.
I don't think I've ever seen them go inside the Sally Port.
I did a couple of times in previous ventures, yes. So they're actually probably going to go in there, going in that way, because they're actually going to do the draw, versus when they come in here to pick up, they park at the end on the other side of that gray Looks like a Chevy Cruze down there. They park over there when they're picking up.
Okay, that's what I thought.
It's a friend of mine who's in the nursing home up there. And she wants me to call the nursing station in town to go help her. She buzzes, you know. She
So
has-
you're dealing with human complications.
Do you remember when the Inn at Montrose was still operating as a sort of a B&B? Did you remember when they were a restaurant and a bar and everything?
The bar was in the basement?
In the bar basement? This friend is Cindy Syndergaard, who was part owner and she ran it. She was a chef and everything. And she had a stroke about 7 years ago. And for a while she couldn't even see. She was regained her sight to a large degree, and her left side still paralyzed. And she and her husband, Ken, who was also on the staff there, went to Georgia after that. That's where the throne was on. And he took care of her down there for a while. Then he had a heart attack and passed away. And so she was down there with Nick's family, and some friends of hers brought her back up here, and she got a place in what at that time was the Orchard. But and some of her, another friend at church started taking her to physical therapy at Belfields on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then they asked me to take her on Tuesdays, so now we're switching off Tuesdays and Thursdays and taking her to physical therapy. But and I try to help her all I can. That's what I want somebody to do for me. But she's calling all the time, asking me to call her. And a lot of times I do call her at the nurse's station, but right now I'm busy with something else. And if she has your diapers wet or something like that, she wants you to come. And she's very impatient because she thinks those nurses' aides and stuff just sit around in the hall and talking while she's sitting in the bed. But they have 10 nurses' aides for all human patients, but a lot of them are very, very old, and they can't even feed themselves. So those nurses' aides are really loaded down, and she's very impatient sometimes.
I believe that there's a requirement to only facilities. I believe that's how that works.
Yes, I believe so too.
And it doesn't mean full time, 24 hours. It's on staff. And you're right, it's LP at what do you call it?
Nurses' aides?
Nurses' aides, right? The CNAs, right? Certified nurses' aides, that's what it is. That's kind of the lowest level, entry level. There's a certain level of training, but it's the most cost-effective position.
And I don't know if those would even qualify for that. I have no idea. But I wish I could help them more, but goodness gracious.
I was a personal aide, certified personal CPA, certified personal aide.
Well, guys, what do you want to do? You want to turn off the video and wait a little bit?
That might be worthwhile. We're going to fill 2 hours with no phone calls.
All right, so because we haven't had any calls and it is 8:05, we're going to give it a little longer. We're going to shut off the video stream and resume if someone does call in, so it'll be much more practical video to post up there rather than us just sitting around talking.
And we're not going to be available next Friday. That's what everybody's calling in.
Of course.
Did you bring your bug spray?
Yes. You want to get the bug spray?
I wouldn't have a clue. Where is it?
Side door.
I can go to the side